Welcome to the Deep Journal channel. By subscribing to our channel before moving on to our video, you can be instantly informed about the last news and comments. Iran's supreme leader has stoked tensions in the Middle East by urging Muslims to unite against Israel by supporting Palestinian insurgents militarily and financially. A statement issued by Iran's Revolutionary Guard claimed, "Deadly blows will soon rain down on Israel from Palestine," with the strong implication that Hamas and other insurgents have been armed by Tehran. Speaking just hours after the confirmation of a ceasefire brokered by Egypt brought an end to 11 days of violence, Ayatollah Saeed Ruhollah Musavi Khamenei issued his call to arms in a statement carried by multiple Iranian media outlets. He said, "Muslim states must sincerely support the Palestinian people, through military or financial support or in rebuilding Gaza's infrastructure." Mr. Khamenei urged Muslims to demand that their governments back the Palestinians. Iran, which does not recognize Israel, supports and is widely understood to have armed the Islamist militants of Hamas, who rule the Gaza Strip, while President Mahmoud Abbas's Palestinian Authority controls Palestinian-populated areas of the occupied West Bank. Hamas and the Islamic Jihad group fired hundreds of rockets into Israel before Friday's truce, killing a dozen civilians, although Israel said its Iron Dome defense system had shot the majority of them down. Also, Hamas spokesman Abu Obaida warned Israel, "We have prepared a serious missile attack that would hit Israel from Haifa in the north to Ramon Airport in the south, and we have frozen it due to the ceasefire." Iranian Foreign Ministry spokesman Saeed Khatibzadeh tweeted, "Congratulations to our Palestinian sisters and brothers for the historic victory. Your resistance forced the aggressor to retreat." The Iranian Revolutionary Guard Corps, IRGC, said in a statement, "The Intifada has gone from using stones to powerful, precise missiles. And in the future the Zionists can expect to endure deadly blows from within the occupied territories." A year ago, Mr. Khamenei bragged that Tehran had transformed the military balance of power between Israel and the Palestinians. Iran today displayed an Iranian-made combat drone which it said had a range of 2,000 kilometers, 1,250 miles, naming it Gaza, in honor of the Palestinian struggle against Israel, state media reported. The drone Israel shot down near the border with Jordan on Tuesday was Iranian, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said on Thursday. "While we were engaged in these hostilities a few days ago, Iran sent an armed drone from Iraq or from Syria," Netanyahu told German Foreign Minister Heiko Maas, who was in Jerusalem. "Iranian forces launched an armed drone, which our forces intercepted on the border between Israel and Jordan. I think this says everything on the true patron of terror in the Middle East and in the world, Iran," Netanyahu added, showing Maas a piece of the drone. The IDF shot down a drone on Tuesday that was approaching the Israeli-Jordanian border, traveling toward the Emek Hamayonot Regional Council in northern Israel. IDF units collected the fragments of the destroyed aircraft for further examination. At the time, residents of Beit Shean, which sits within the regional council, were instructed to lock themselves in their homes for nearly an hour, before the IDF announced that the area had been secured, and that it was again safe for people to leave their homes. Netanyahu said he described to Maas how Israel is fighting on multiple fronts, and that Iran is behind all of them. "A Gaza ceasefire is impossible as long as Hamas is armed with rockets," former United States Middle East envoy Dennis Ross told the Jerusalem Post as he discussed the violence between Israelis and Palestinians over the last 2 weeks. "So long as Hamas can have rockets, then the prospect of changing anything in Gaza will be very limited, and any calm is basically a short-term calm," Ross said, adding that as long as Hamas posed missiles, they will fire them into Israel. He urged the international community to link humanitarian aid to Hamas demilitarization. "And even then," he said, "a mechanism would be needed to ensure that humanitarian assistance to Gaza was not diverted to Hamas for the reconstruction of its rocket arsenal. The question is, can Hamas be sufficiently on the defensive to give up its rockets?" Ross said. That can only happen if there is an offer for substantive reconstruction assistance to Gaza, Ross said. Ross said he believed that the Abraham Accords that allowed for normalized ties between Israel and the Arab world could be used to help preserve the option for a two-state solution, until such time as a negotiated settlement is possible. Iran's latest drones tested Israel's Iron Dome defense system. Experts believe Iran is supplying Hamas with the means to set up its own defense manufacturing industry. Israel's vaunted Iron Dome defense system was severely tested by a battery of drones designed and supplied by Iran, experts told The National. During the recent conflict, Tehran supplied Hamas with equipment and technology for the extremists to set up their own defense manufacturing industry to launch attacks from Gaza. The threat from the barrages during the 11-day war led Israel to deploy its missile interceptors on the back of frigates patrolling the Mediterranean coast to defend gas installations and the mainland. While Israel's forces managed to shoot down at least 6 of the kamikaze drones launched from Gaza, it is understood that Iran will assess the attack methods to improve them for future conflict. Hamas has clearly had external support from Iran and that interest will remain, said Douglas Berry, of the International Institute for Strategic Studies think tank. If there's one country who's going to be interested in how this all went and how Hamas's weapons might be improved in the future, then you would look at Iran. It is apparent that operatives from the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps managed to smuggle components of their Ababil-2 unmanned aerial vehicle and taught Hamas to equip it with a warhead. The drone, which Hamas called the Shahab, carries a 30-kilogram warhead and can cruise at 250 kilometers per hour. It is programmed with GPS coordinates and satellite imagery to find its target. Alternatively, it can be guided visually to the target with a ground operator and camera. With Iran's help, Hamas has developed quite a large number of not terribly expensive munitions, which can be sent to hit fixed targets at long range, said Justin Bronk, of the Royal United Services Institute think tank in London. The Iranians will have given them some initial examples, as well as training manuals on how to construct them. Once you've transferred that expertise, because they are relatively low-tech, Hamas has become pretty proficient at manufacturing their own in Gaza. He said the key components smuggled from Iran would have included GPS tracking chips, stabilization gyroscopes and engine parts. In addition to the estimated 4,000 missiles fired from Gaza that put the Iron Dome system under pressure to protect Israel, Hamas launched several Shahab drones during the conflict. At least one was shot down by an air-to-air missile fired from an F-16 fighter, another intercepted by Iron Dome, while 4 were downed by what the Israelis called classified means. Israel also shot down an actual Iranian drone near the border with Jordan on Tuesday. Israel had to rapidly readjust its defenses to pick up the threat of low-flying UAVs, which have a low radar signature, while it was using its system to intercept Hamas missiles, putting the system under considerable strain. Experts believe that if Hezbollah had become involved and used its satellite-guided missiles developed by Iran, the Iron Dome could have been overwhelmed. The Israelis are now putting a lot of money into developing lasers and other high-powered microwave weaponry to shoot down drones, Mr. Berry said. Hamas's evolution into developing attack drones bears close similarity to the Houthis in Yemen targeting Saudi Arabia, defense analysts believe. This is part of the Iranian program where it's all about helping allied groups to produce their own weaponry from readily available resources so that reduces supplying them directly with weapons, said Jeremy Binney, a missile expert at Jane's Defense Weekly. It makes the situation a bit more deniable for Tehran. Mr. Binney agreed that the Shahab drone was broadly similar to the Iranian Ababil-2, which the Houthis call the Qasif and produce using the Iranian design and components. Hamas is likely doing the same thing as the Houthis because the IRGC has a policy of developing self-sufficiency in the groups it supports. While Israel's defense system appears to have prevented the UAVs causing major casualties, Mr. Berry said it may be only a matter of time before a kamikaze drone gets through. It's a bit like the old IRA, Irish Republican Army, saying that, "You've got to be lucky every day, we've only got to get lucky once," he said.